Do I have to throw the mayor of Dawson Creek out? Adoption of agenda.
2.1 recommendation.
Can I get a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Adoption of the minutes.
3.1 recommendation that council adopt the minutes from the regular council meeting held on February 19th, 2020.
Can I get a second? Second. Discussion? All in favor? Introduction of late items. We have late item 8.2. Can I get a second on that?
Second.
All in favor? Public hearing none. Delegation 6.1. Recommendation. Can someone read that out?
That council hear the delegation from Jeremy Linkletter of the DC Dare to Dream Society.
Second. Discussion? Jeremy, step up. You want a podium?
Sure. Oh no, I can stand. Yeah, so talked to Chris briefly about how we'd like to get involved with Canada Day. It was on our form, I think, there, what we're looking to do. And it's pretty, we're just looking to get our brand out there. We've finally got our logo for the Dare to Dream Society. It's pretty exciting. And we just want to get out in the community a little more. And we'd love to get involved with Canada Day.
And how much is this going to cost us?
Well, I think just I wouldn't want to ask any more or any less than anybody else would.
Well, what are you going to do? That's the first
I think we
question.
would pretty much offer this similar sort of thing. We can provide some music, and we talked to Chris. Maybe you guys could help us out with tent that, and kind of just add to the event that way.
Okay. Do we have Marty already contract with Marty?
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. We've got Marty contracted, although I have stressed to Marty a couple of occasions in the past that it is council's event and the music isn't an exclusive one-shot deal. So he's been contracted for 4 hours of music. Anything above and beyond that is totally up to you.
Any questions? Ken?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Are you able to enlighten us as to what the Dare to Dream Society is, what they do?
You bet. Well, we intend to promote passion and art, basically music in our community, and we've already sponsored art class. We've had some competitions now for a logo to help get the community involved and get their art out there, right, and their passion. And it's a pretty cool logo. Did you see the logo?
Yeah, I think so.
It's pretty cool. I like it. And now we want to continue doing that and help sponsoring classes and other events like this. But right now, we're the umbrella of the Dawson Creek Music Festival. That's our major event we do every year, and it's happening again here in July. But we want to expand and do a lot more under this umbrella, since we've become a non-for-profit society 3 years ago now. So we're in the works. We're getting a website. The wheels are spinning. So yeah, that's kind of what
So you're interested in holding a music festival down at the park?
Well, I think we would just like to start maybe just slowly adding to your event. Maybe the Poos Park is something we'd be interested in the future as well. But for Canada Day, we were looking to maybe get involved there too, to help them get our brand out there. We'll have a float in the parade again, like we did last year. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'm fine.
We can't really tell you anything right now, but we will discuss it and then we'll get back to you.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for your
Thanks
time.
for coming.
Thanks, Jeremy.
See you. Yeah.
6.2 recommendation.
That council hear the delegation from Staff Sergeant Damon.
Mr. Warrell. Can I have a second? Second. Come on up.
Worship, Councilor Lacey, thank you for having me. Should know I've seen my name by now. So.
I did. I corrected it.
I do have a presentation. Is it possible to do it here? Yeah, it's just easier to put it up so you all can see.
Damon, have you ever met Leonard? This is Leonard Hebert from the regional district.
Hello. I don't remember if I have, yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say that. We have. I was just wearing security on my back.
Well, it's better than being behind the bars looking out at it.
Totally different circumstance.
I think we've got to go through that box a little bit. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Okay. So you should just be
When it comes to that, it's way better at the techie stuff. Everything else, I can't get that to work. He can.
Okay, maybe not. Okay, plan B. Is it on that USB yet?
It is, yep.
Are you pressing the input on the remote?
No, it's set for the one.
I hate to admit to reading directions.
It's your feminine side.
Directions.
I've been hanging around us too long, Ken. Ken, you've been hanging around us too long.
That's it. That's
Do you want to just pass me for now? No, get this working or?
There's
Yeah, I don't want to take any sign or anything.
This one, so if you want to pop that, I'm assuming there's no ransomware on that.
Marty got it all.
Nope.
Here, we have to leave now.
There we go.
Where's your snowmobile?
Oh, actually, it's not the right one. Here, hold on a second.
Okay.
Let me switch it over. That's almost the same.
Funny that mine just pops right in, but it's not liking yours for some reason.
I can use that one.
Can you use that one?
Yeah, it's the one I did for the community presentation. Kind of the same thing.
Okay.
Basically the same, but I might just open up a cheaper page here. So basically, I wanted to meet with you today just to go over the policing priorities for 2020. Sorry, one moment here, I'm just trying to get this up for you.
Larry's watching her run the computer.
Yeah, I could really help him there.
You guys are gonna get the same thing on Monday.
We're gonna have quite a
Have the IT guy in the room.
So policing priorities for 2020. So every year we identify some priorities to focus our resources, attention, energy on, and to try to make a little bit of a difference every year. And the goal being that every year we make a little bit of difference, and then over the long term we're making a big difference. So we usually try to limit it to 3 or 4 priorities that we can focus our attention on. If we focus on too many, we spread ourselves too thin, we don't have a lot of impact. We focus on just a couple, we have more of an impact that makes more of a difference, right? So, so when we're identifying our priorities, we kind of reach out to the stakeholders that are going to be affected, and we get everybody's input, and then kind of collectively we kind of decide where we really need to focus our resources for the coming year. We operate on the fiscal year, so when we set our priorities, they run April 1st to March 30th. So I'm preparing these priorities right now, and we'll be starting April 1st, 2020. So, and again, I'm using a presentation that I used for the community presentation. Were any of you at the community presentation at Town Hall that we did?
No, they had council when I was there.
Oh, okay. It was actually really good. So.
I watched it online.
Oh, did you? So to give you kind of an idea of what we saw for 2019, total calls that we took were 9,344 calls for service. 79% of those were within the city of Dawson Creek. 21% were in the surrounding rural area. I don't know specifically how many were in Peace Coopy. And that's pretty much standard. Every month when I do your policing or the monthly policing reports, it's pretty much the same. It's around that area, 79-21, give or take a % or 2. So it doesn't really change very much. We compared that to 2018. We actually saw our total services, calls for service drop by 3%. So we did see a decrease in calls for service. And when I'm saying calls for service, I'm pretty much talking about crime. So our calls for service, or the crime that we saw, we dropped by 3% compared to 2018. So we're moving in the right direction. albeit slowly.
For here, now they're just moving to Alberta.
Yeah, that's okay with that though. I'm okay with that. You're okay with that.
No, actually, they're
So more specifically, the calls for service within the city of Dawson Creek decreased by 1%, and the calls for service within the rural area decreased by 9%. So a pretty significant decrease in calls for service specifically in the rural area. I think I showed this to you guys last year. It really hasn't changed a whole much for 2019, but property crime continues to be the largest area for our calls for service. It occupies about 52% of our total calls. So you remember our total calls was, I think, 9,344 calls for service, so just over half of those were property crime related. 24% was other criminal code, that's impaired driving, breach charges, and that kind of stuff. Persons crimes are 21%, and I'll speak on persons crimes, they're slowly going up every year. So it's a very slow, gradual rise every year, so that's something that we're gonna have to focus on sometime, whether it's this year or next year. And then drugs, 3%, and then this came up during the community meeting, everybody was like, drugs, 3%, what are you kidding me? There's more drugs than that here. So I'll explain that real quick. When I say drugs for 3% of our calls for service, that's calls about drugs. Like people are calling us saying this person has drugs, or we're stopping a vehicle and we come to, and that's the reason we're stopping. It's the initial reason for that call for service is about drugs. So we don't get a whole lot of calls about drugs, about people selling drugs, whether it's from their home or on the street. That's not to say that a bunch of our property crime doesn't involve drugs, because it does. We know that property crimes are related to drugs and they're one and the same, but only 3% of our actual calls for service are about drugs. So we don't get a whole lot of calls. Any questions about that at all? Or? So last year when I built the priority plan, we kind of did the same thing as this year. I think I'm doing a little bit more this year. We didn't do a community presentation last year. I think I did talk to you guys last year though, and we kind of talked to the city as well. And we built our priorities last year based on that consultation that we, with our stakeholders. And we identified 3 priorities last year, the first one being property crime. It made sense because property crime occupies half of our calls for service to focus on property crime, because we focus on that, we'll have the biggest impact overall on the crime that is going on within the Dawson Creek area. So the objectives that we set were to decrease the break-in enters, specifically break-in enters by 8 to 10%, and decrease vehicle thefts by 8 to 10%. And we had initiatives to support those objectives. I like the initiatives because we can use actually out-of-the-box thinking. I can do whatever I want for initiatives to kind of support the objectives, to reach them, to fall under the priority. So for initiatives, I speak to my members and say, use out-of-the-box. What do you think we can do for initiatives to support a reduction of break-in enters by 8 to 10%, to support vehicle theft reduction by 8 to 10%? And some of the initiatives that we identified were to continue with our Bait Cart program, and continue working with that program, to track its effectiveness and make use of it. And the Bait Cart program has actually been very effective in the Dawson Creek area. We worked really hard to better our communication and our relationship with the volunteer crime prevention programs, such as Citizens on Patrol and Rural Crime Watch. And then we also made a commitment to provide 2 community presentations for break-in enter. So at this time last year, we were dealing with a bunch of break-in enters. They climbed like 300% in the last year. It was ridiculous, and it was something we really need to focus on. And a lot of that continues to be unlocked residences and vehicles. So a lot of our thefts from vehicles and break-in enters are homes and vehicles that are just left unlocked. So we wanted to do some presentations and proactive stuff to encourage people to lock their vehicles and homes.
Thank you. I've noticed that you guys, I work at Chances, you guys have come and checked our staff parking lot, left little cards saying, oh,
yeah,
good, you had your
same
vehicle
kind of
locked.
thing, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're checking vehicles, we're putting the spot notices on them, we've been spotted. So Citizens on Patrol is kind of taking over that now in the city of Dawson Creek, which is great. So because of the initiatives that we had in place, the results that we can report to date is that our break-in enters have decreased, and this is compared to 2018. Our break-in enters decreased by 13%, and our vehicle thefts decreased by 25%. So we've met the objectives that we set at the beginning of the year. We're still working through, obviously, because we're not in March 30th yet. But we've been successful with the objectives and the initiatives that we had in place. The second priority that we had last year was organized crime. I'm going to speed up because I'm taking a lot of your time. The second initiative or the priority was organized crime. When we're talking about organized crime, we're talking about the criminals that are prolific offenders, and they have a specific intent. They're organized to commit crime in the Dawson Creek area. More specifically, I'm talking about in our area, organized property crime. So property crime groups that are stealing vehicles, sending over to Grand Prairie to chop shops and that kind of thing. So we recognize that organized crime are typically prolific offenders. They're people that are in jail, and as soon as they're out of jail, they're committing crime again.
You're a con, real con.
They're career criminals.
Yeah.
Yes. So these kind of people are typically on court-ordered conditions, and it was important for us to be able to monitor those conditions, and as soon as we could, breach them and get them back into jail where they belong. So we wanted to increase our breach charges by 10 to 15%. That was the goal that we set. In order to help us reach that, we tracked and increased our monthly curfew checks that we were completing. We reviewed our outstanding arrest warrants that we had for people and initiated a plan to get all those people that were on arrest warrants arrested into the courts. And we developed and improved our prolific offender program. Big changes to that program. Specifically, one member's taken that on, and he's been very successful with rolling that program out. And it's not just us that's working with the prolific offender program, it's also working with Crown to make sure that, hey, if we arrest this guy, you guys need to prosecute him hard in court. So we've got those partners, those stakeholders engaged, helping us with this program to make sure that those offenders go back to jail.
Well, if you need our help, let us know.
Thank you. So again, we set a target to increase our breach charges by 10 to 15%. To date, we've increased them by 33%. So a significant increase in our breach charges. So that means that we're monitoring these people better, and we're getting them back to jail where they belong quicker. And we've noticed that because this is going on, we're seeing an overall decrease in our crime. That's why our vehicle thefts, this is supporting our first priority, where our vehicle thefts are going down 25%, because we're getting these people back into jail where they belong. So. The third priority we identified last year was mental health. Again, if you remember it all last year, we had mental health calls that increased by 200%. They were climbing at a substantial rate, and it was not sustainable for us. So we identified it as a priority that we needed to look at. We set a goal to decrease the calls by 10 to 15%. And the initiatives that we identified to support that were to create or join a mental health strategy committee, which we've done, to conduct a full review of our mental health calls for the previous year to find out what was going on in similar MOs. We did that and to establish new mental health response strategy in consultation with the mental health community in Dawson Creek and area. And again, we've done it. So results to date, our mental health calls have decreased by 13%. So again, we're reaching the objective that we met or set. So just to summarize our priority plan from last year, as a result of the priority plan that we set last year, our break-in errors decreased by 13%, vehicle thefts went down by 25%, breach charges increased by 33%, and mental health calls decreased by 13%. So overall, we had some pretty good success in it. So some priorities, so this is more for the community meeting that I did, but we ran a community public town hall to get some ideas from the public on what they really felt the priorities should be going into 2020. And we threw out some ideas on there of what commonly come up as priorities in our city policing priorities, whether it's Dawson Creek or anywhere, it doesn't really matter. And when we ran that meeting, we looked for some feedback from the community on where they felt we really need to focus our priorities. And it was really good. So we had about 75 people there all together. We had them all separated into tables. They all had their whiteboards, and they listed a bunch of priorities that they really felt had affected them personally and they wanted us to focus on. So we collected all that information. And the top 4 that we came with out of that meeting from the community is they wanted us to focus on number 1, drugs, number 2, prolific or repeat offenders, number 3, property crime, and a 4th was community engagement, youth or community engagement. So as a result of that meeting, the priorities, the top 4 priorities are basically that. I reworded the repeat offenders to organized crime because that's basically what it was. But from that meeting, our priorities, they pretty much nailed what I would have selected as our priorities anyways. I definitely am leaning towards focusing on property crime because it's our biggest area of concern in the area, and I think we need to focus, if we focus on that, we have the biggest impact on overall crime. I think we need to focus on organized crime, the repeat offenders, the guys that are coming out of jail committing crime day 1, and we get them back into jail. I think our crime's going to continue going down. And certainly drugs is connected with property crime. I think we need to put a little bit more work into the drugs that are going on, the drug trafficking, the drug selling, and maybe the drugs that are coming in from Grand Prairie, Fort St. John, and Prince George, and do a little bit more work on that over the next year.
And what about the drug houses?
Yeah, so that would be under that as well. So I'll tell you right now, some people mentioned that at the community meeting about drug houses. We get 0 calls about drug houses. I mean, I think maybe we've had one in the last year about us selling drugs. Yeah, we get 0 calls about people selling drugs, so. Yeah, just saying, yeah, I mean, that's that 3% call. If we get calls about drug houses, they'll show up there, so. So I guess I'd like to, that's kind of what I have from our 2019 priorities. You've seen our crime trends for the last year and where we're at, and I'd like to hear any input that you might have or any suggestions or recommendations you have on priorities for the 2020 season. So.
Sure.
Community involvement, what did, after your meeting, what have you?
I think, I spent 3 hours this morning judging a science fair project at one of the schools. So I think that we're actually very involved in the community, but perhaps we don't advertise it very much. And maybe we need to put out some more media releases about our involvement in the communities, but that might just involve tracking, maybe a better tracking of our community involvement, because we actually are pretty involved in communities, I think. And doing some better tracking, maybe reporting it back so everybody knows the work that we're actually doing in the communities. So.
Have you been to Pooh School?
Me personally, no.
Has it attached?
I think someone's identified as a school liaison officer, so yeah, I would have to confirm, but I'm pretty sure they are, yeah.
Kim?
I'm wondering, from your position, Staff Sergeant, Officer Creek, leader, what kind of legislative change would you like to see occur that would help you to do your job more effectively?
Good question.
From the province, can you get rid of the charter rights and freedoms, or? No? It's probably too big. We'll go smaller. So,
Maybe next year.
legislative changes that'll let me do my job better. Well, nothing comes to mind. I'm gonna have to think about it. Yeah, I mean, honestly, nothing comes to mind, so.
Does it not get frustrating when
people get out and then commit crimes? Is that where you're going?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's job security, if that's where you're asking. Yeah, it does get frustrating, and it's things are changing in the courts and the justice system in BC, even recently, where property crime is taking a little bit of a backseat to persons crimes. So property crime offenders are very rarely going to come out on independent conditions anymore. There's no curfew checks anymore. They don't put them on curfews anymore. So that's all rolling through the. So if you want to talk about, I guess, legislative changes, that's a perfect opportunity right there. Is we've received information that Crown will no longer be seeking curfews on offenders, on property crime offenders, so they're not going to be bound to their homes anymore.
Oh, really?
I think it's a matter of perhaps the courts just being overloaded and they need to focus more on persons crimes. So.
Oh, wow.
So I haven't personally seen that yet come out of our justice system with our Crown or our courts here, but I've been informed that that we may be get that way. So.
Crazy.
There is a continued concern about our school zone, and I noticed, I believe it was yesterday, there was some activity there, and that was certainly appreciated. And it's no particular group. It's young people, it's old people, it's men, it's women, it's kids. It's really hard. How do we get people to slow down when going through the school zone?
Even with your cardboard cops?
Our constable who's competing.
Yeah.
Oh, he's out there too.
I saw him. Yeah, he's out there.
He's out there. People just know he's there now, so they just go through.
Yeah, we have a provincial traffic section, which in their mandate is to work the provincial highways, obviously which runs through Kuskookee. And they've been somewhat short-staffed over the last several years. There's only been one person in there of a five-person unit, pardon me. But they recently brought in more members. So they're at 2 right now. I've been told that they're going to 3 here right away. So that should make a difference, I think, with some enforcement on the highway. And I don't know if we've received any actual, again, I don't know if we've received any complaints or requests to work the speed zone. You know, we work on calls for service. You know, when we get a call for service, we try to address it. I don't think we've received a call to, hey, can you come, you know, a call, like open a file. I'll open a file and generate a file that we want you to come work in the Pooskoopi speed zone. Because I would send that to the traffic section.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is, yeah, so if you're noticing people speeding through the school zone, call us and report it. And we'll open a file and we'll investigate it by conducting enforcement.
So we do just get their license plate number?
It's pretty difficult to do because, you know, I don't know what the evidence is that you would be, if you're saying they're speeding, you know, what training do you have to say that they're going, you know, do you do visual speed destination? Like, I don't think that would be very successful in court. But certainly give us a call and we'll attend.
If the speed sign is saying 55 and you're passing them at the same time and you look at that speed sign and it says 55?
Can't see that being successful in court because when did you get it last, get it tuned to verify speed accuracy, all that kind of stuff. This is stuff I have to deal with every day when we court. So yeah, so I can't see that being successful, but you know, the best case scenario would be to call us, report it, you know, that we're having this issue, we'd like to see a file generated and some enforcement action.
That happens
And
every
we'll
day.
attend.
Yeah, it's 8 o'clock in the morning every day.
Yeah, no calls though, because I work.
Well, I'll be looking at 5 to 8 when I'm pulling in the driveway. Hey! And then can you explain to everybody about our police station?
Yeah, so I submitted a business case back in, I believe it was November, and I have to go through the chain of command. So I submitted a lengthy business case looking for support to establish the community policing office in Pooskoopi. And it's been supported by my senior leadership with the request to hold it until April 1st to submit to the province, and it's simply because the province is a little short on cash right now. So April 1st, when the money comes and starts flowing again, that will be sent to the province for support.
Thanks.
It's not a huge amount. I think it's between, I gave a couple different scenarios, but it was between $4,500 and $8,000 to get the equipment we need to set up in the community policing office and to get it up and running. So
Can we do a GoFundMe page?
GoFundMe, I can, but if you want to go ahead and do it, go ahead and do it. It's one of those ask for forgiveness on permission things. So.
Okay. Thank you, Damon. Anybody else have any more questions? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. Okay, now we're ready. Okay, unfinished business arising. New business, 8.1 recommendation.
The council received the budget proposal for environmental health, public works, sewer fund, and water fund for an auction.
Can I have a seconder? Second. Any discussion on this? We've already read it a few times, so yeah. All in favor? Okay, and then we have 8.2. Yeah. Purchase.
Advise council of the changes that have been made to the Canada Summer Jobs Program, mainly around hiring and start dates.
Second.
Discussion.
That's the pitch.
I talked to Bob Zimmer today, and he said that he'll be looking at this and he'll let me know when and if when we can hire people. So I don't know. I think this is important that we need to hire these summer students, and I think we should be putting the money forward before summer students even worry about the grant. I don't know. What do you guys think?
How much do you need to get for the grant?
How much is it, Chris?
It's about 3,000 per student.
How many students do we get?
We're applying for 4 again
So
here
that's 12,000
this year. Last year we applied for 3, but we were only successful in receiving funding for 2.
But we can put this in, and if we get the grants, we don't have to use this money, right?
Well, the budget line for the summer students has already been approved in the operational public works budget. so that line item's there. We do have to budget for the students are needed to do our, maintenance projects, cutting grass, parks, all of that stuff. So one way or another, in my opinion, the operation needs those summer students. The grant comes because it supports that. So. But we had a discussion today in the staff meeting, and the director of public works is firm. We definitely need the students. He's not sure if that March 11th or May 11th start date works for them operationally, especially considering the weather and stuff here this year. It's probably going to be a pretty early start to the heating season. So one of the options available to council is always to hire the students and forego the grant, and it is what it is, and it's sort of that balancing act between 3 weeks of operational need and a little bit of money that's going to come back from the grant program. Because according to the literature that we double checked on, if we hire anybody for those positions prior to that May 11th start date, we're automatically eligible for it. So if we want to continue to pursue the grant, assuming these
I think we should still proceed with the grant. I really do. I mean, that's money that we could use.
Yeah, but the caveat there is if we bring folks on board end of April when the school programs end and we hire them and get them working, anybody that's on the payroll is automatically eligible to claim for grant funding. So we're paying for them 100% one way or the other.
They still go through the grant.
So,
And hire somebody else.
No, just go through the grant.
yeah, so that Councilor Smith's just saying half, and we don't know if we're going to get the grant either. There have been years where we've been going for it, so.
Yeah.
It's an interesting, shift in the dates because, the students are off somewhere between April 15th and April 20th, give or take, so right there's a lag where they're kind of in limbo too. Any organizations that absolutely require these grants to operate, such as the museum, can't make a hiring decision until May the 11th, until they know for sure.
John, do you have anything to say?
See, would it be catastrophic if we delayed the opening of the museum until the 11th?
Chris, that's what
Yeah.
I would come out of.
So I've had a conversation with the museum curator, and it was in fact him that brought this to our attention. The museum opening date is sort of etched in stone from an advertising standpoint. All of our tourism publications and everything listed as being open, May 1st. So they're pretty resolved in opening it up for that deadline. The one that they said they can fairly easily move is the garage sale. So they can shift that back one weekend to do after the start date. So my ask of Les was that, to speak to the members of the board to see if they could find any board members or friends or family that were willing to volunteer to keep the operation going between May 1st and the 11th when they started. So he's going to have those conversations and see where it goes.
There's no guarantees that we'll get the grants either.
No, there's no guarantee that they'll get it either. And that's the thing, it's pretty far down the season, so, I can envision a scenario, worst case scenario, where we find out, both them and us are declining. The museum's already 2 weeks open at that point, and I would think most students who need to work in order to fund their education, for that season have long found jobs by then. So what happens if it's a no? So,
I'm not making that call.
yeah.
I talked to Bob today, so I'm saying go for the grants.
Yeah, okay.
All in favor?
Was that a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion.
Seconded?
Yeah. Seconded, Ryan? You seconded it? Someone seconded it. Let's get this meeting going.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
I'm kind of still opposed to the motion, but that's okay.
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 Who's all in favor? You two opposed? Okay. 9 correspondence. Anybody want to see any correspondence here? We already handled this 9.1 at the regional district. I think it's a little old. Did you see that, Leonard? Is there anything in there?
See this information?
And there's one here. Which one was that?
You get it.
The insurance letter. Chris, which one was that?
That would be page 34. I believe.
31, 34? But what recommendation was it on?
That would be on the UDC.
Fort Hardy.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah.
So, thank you, but no thank you, I'll do a motion. No thank you, but no thank you, insurance is expensive enough up here in the Northeast. You have a second on that?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Anything else? The only future is fossil fuel free. Can I have a motion to write a letter to these guys?
Did I do that?
Page 43. You know, my comments is like bleep, 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 bleep. We need oil and gas in our area. And Chris, could you please word that up? Who's seconding it?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Oh, yes, no resolutions, no bylaws, administration reports. Chris, is your CA report in here?
No.
You don't have to read it out. You're gonna attach it?
No, Rich was off sick for last week, so.
12.2, action items. So, I must not have been here when you guys decided that the council will wait for the housing assessment needs to be completed for sending a letter to the Toronto House. Chris?
Sorry?
Letter to them.
Letter to the Toronto House?
I think, if I recall, we had discussed about they have another lot here to build another Trombley house, another extension, but we haven't had our housing assessment done for what we need in this community yet, so we sort of tabled it until we get that report to see whether or not it's feasible or we require.
We can't just write them a letter and find out if it's okay that we look at that and also point that out to the regional district for the Toronto House? Do we have to table this or wait? We can't just ask the board if they're curious or interested in building another
I
facility?
believe there was a public statement with regards to that facility already made, was there not?
And we wanted everyone here at the meeting too to discuss it.
Well, and I stand to be corrected, but was it not indicated that there was no need for any increased housing such as the Trombley House in this community?
That wasn't a public statement. That was one person making a statement. That's all that was.
A person with power and influence?
There's people around that person.
Well, let's go for it. I'm 100% for it.
Okay, can you send it up?
So we'll bring that back, your worship. and
Yeah.
send it over.
Please, and thank you. Can I have a second on that? All in favor? Okay, capital special projects. We don't have the list yet. Do you have a list? Council calendars.
I'll be attending the Tunnel Ridge dinner on the 26th.
Oh, I will too.
Yeah.
And this should be a must for council to go, because this is Peace River Association, or whatever it's called, I don't know, what is it called? Blair?
River.
Municipal Association, PRMA, I think.
No,
PRLGA.
Well, see, it used to be the PRMA 20 years ago.
The older one, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you get that? Peace River.
All this newfangled stuff.
I'm just saying, PRLGA, that's how everyone calls it. I'm away on vacation.
But I will be attending.
All
and
these
so,
name changes, what's up that?
You guys,
Just like NCO.
Town
I
Center.
know.
But I think that's about it.
Reports, council rights report.
I'm working on January. I think I've got just about everything organized to do that. I have a couple more people that are still to get back to me on whether they're going to put booths in. And other than that, I had a library meeting and Courtney has to retrieve the budget so that I can bring it forward to you guys.
Councilor Smith,
Nothing for me.
Councilor Hebert,
I've had a couple of people approach me about what, the survey that we sent out.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and they have no idea what some of those things are. And what's the difference between the Jamboree and the Spring Fling and,
It's spring thing.
yeah, that was on there. And do we really spend that much money on Canada Day? There was all kinds of questions. I was wondering if maybe they're,
We do a breakdown.
yeah, or even just an explanation, because I mean, there are new people in this community that don't know what those things are. Next time,
so you're making a
next
motion?
time we make a survey. Oh, no, I'm just saying, it's just something to think about.
Councilor Grover. Oh, Chris?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just maybe to comment on that, Councilor Hebert, those numbers were, pulled from the associated GLs for those events, Councilor Hebert.
Oh,
If you're hearing comments from anybody in the public about how did they arrive at that, please ask them to give me a call over fully public records. I'll have a discussion on.
It wasn't the money, it was what they were, like, what is the Spring Fling, what is the Jamboree, and how did the Jamboree come about, and, yeah, those kinds of
Well, I
things.
can't even remember, it's been that long.
I remember.
How'd it come about then?
The Jamboree?
Yeah.
That was just for people to, all the clubs and stuff to make money.
Yeah, they have fun.
Mr. Grover.
Attended a Courtesy Matters meeting and had the privilege of going to Fort St. John. Attended a subcommittee of the Peace River Regional District regarding solid waste, and just an informative meeting. Some really good ideas coming from the subcommittee, and I hope they were presented to the Peace River Regional District. I did see a summary of the presentation and was pleased with what I had read there. So I think it's going really well. And that was the 2 events that I was happy to attend, and I'm happy to see you back in your chair.
Thank you. Kind of glad to be back, really. No, I'm not. No. I've been doing taxes and usual district meetings and meetings as much as I can. You guys after tax season will get a full report on what I've been doing. And now, can I have?
Great, why am I? Oh, motion go on camera, after section 91.
Can you read it?
Matter that under another enactment is such that the public may be excluded from the meeting.
Oh, second?
And there you go.